Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. On this week's episode, Aaron and Kevin are having a conversation about John the Baptist's question to Jesus. Are you the one to come, or should we look for another? And so in this conversation, we talk about our reactions to Jesus, the ways that we look at him, the way we respond to him. Does he cause us offense? Do we feel at peace with him? We have all kinds of conversations regarding this sort of question. And so as you look to Jesus to try to figure out who he is, we hope that this conversation is helpful for you. And as always, our goal of this podcast is that we can model for you what it looks like to have spiritual conversations, so you can take these kinds of topics and go and start a conversation with somebody else as well. So, as always, we hope you enjoy this conversation.
No.
I do want to talk about the time change.
Okay.
Howdy ho, Kevin.
Well, hey, you remind me of Tim the Toolman Taylor's neighbor, who I can't remember. You remember that guy? Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, Wilson.
Wilson.
Yeah, the other day I fixed something at my house, and no, Abby, my wife said, howdy ho to me. No.
Did she peer
I'm
over
so
your...
sorry. How did it work? I did something. I was trying to say what Wilson says, and I couldn't remember what Wilson says. And here I am saying what Wilson says. Howdy ho, neighbor.
Yeah, it might be Heidi Ho. Heidi Ho there, neighbor.
Heidi ho. She was the name of the tool person that came out on the show and brought the tools.
Really?
Heidi. She was one of them.
I did not know that.
I was a big home improvement fan.
Do you know what those...
Speaking of home improvement, how are your home improvement projects going these days, Kevin?
They're going. We got a new igniter on the oven. That baby's clicking on nice. Thanks for the tips, by the way.
So here's the deal. To all our listeners, both Kevin and I, independently of one another, within the last month, had to replace the igniters on our stoves at home, and we did it. So... if all else fails in this pastor business, you want to open a appliance repair shop with me?
No.
Oh, man.
But I've been trying this whole time to think of a great song about the fire come down or something, you know.
Yeah.
Set your church on fire. That's it. That's the one I wanted. Anyways.
Wait, burn your house down?
Well, no, we just got our ovens back on.
Oh.
You know? It felt like a metaphorical kind of like Satan is attacking our households, but he's concentrating on the igniters to our ovens, which is an odd move.
Well, so we do sing a song at our early service, but I think it's Build Your Kingdom Here.
Yes.
Set your church on fire.
That's right.
Win this nation back. Do you remember when Notre Dame burned? Mm-hmm. That happened. I forget what day of the week it was. Let's say it was a Friday or Saturday.
Sure.
That next Sunday, we had that song scheduled to play at church, and we did.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, huh. We don't literally mean don't actually set your church on fire, please.
Sure. Yeah, I imagine too, probably not too many people here that day who were impacted by the burning down of Notre Dame.
No, probably not.
There's another great hymn that talks about something, even when steeples are falling, it's kind of like the church will continue. That's a great one. That's a great song.
Steeples are falling.
Yes.
Golly.
There's your quiz, folks. If you're playing at home today, send in the title of that hymn and you'll win.
Obviously, we know it.
It's right. You can win some Conversate swag.
Whoa.
No more details to follow. I hope someone writes in.
Yeah, I hope so too.
And then you'll get swag. Yeah, so home improvement.
Yeah. So we had a time change here.
We did.
How you feeling?
About the same as before, I guess.
Go to bed, wake up. Go to bed, wake up.
Still tired and still drinking coffee.
Yeah. Well, the first night of time change at our house, so Ari, who's our youngest, has never slept well. Mm-hmm. And that night, I mean, that was he slept for it was like a 5-hour stretch or something. Mm-hmm. That's like the best he's ever done.
Glory, glory, hallelujah kind of a thing.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
It worked out well on our side as far as the kids go too, because our kids also wake up just early all the time, and so since waking up like early was actually waking up normal now, so they have later bedtimes. I guess that's the only difference now.
Yeah.
But so it goes.
So it goes. Well, last week on the podcast we had Shane Kleiman in here. That was super fun.
That was
I
fun.
thought, just a big thanks to Shane. I thought he was really articulate about his life and his faith and his living it out. And that was really cool to hear some of the stories of ways that God's been working in his life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you're interested in discipleship, he seems like another great resource of a person to just say, hey, tell me about your experience. Because he did that for us last week. And like you said, it was really easy to track with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because, one of our goals of this podcast is really to model to you all how to have these spiritual conversations and to start spiritual conversations in your life with other people. And so I can't remember if we talked to Shane in the podcast, but I've had him share with other groups before, like, how did you, because he is like actually intentionally weekly discipling people, like meeting with people in this discipleship relationship. It's not just a casual, like, oh, maybe I'm kind of discipling this person. It's like, no, I'm leading this person in a deeper walk with Jesus, and they know that, and I know that, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I've had him share with other groups, like, how did it go from, like, how did you start that conversation? Like, how did you move from, like, we're kind of friends and have this association to, like, can I lead you, as you grow in your faith? Like, what did you actually do for that? And so, and he has done that, and it's his to share. So you can reach out to Shane and ask him, but it's not more complicated than he just did it. So
I'm still going to reach out to Shane.
Yeah. No, that's good. So this week, this last Sunday, we kept moving through the Gospel of Matthew, and you preached and you located us in Matthew chapter 11 as John the Baptist has been imprisoned now, and he sends some of his disciples to Jesus. Now, I got to be honest with you, the way that you preached about it, I had never really considered the text in the way that you preached. So, and I'll say more and then let you talk. But John the Baptist sends some of his disciples to Jesus from prison, saying to Jesus, "Are you the one to come, or should we look for another?" And Jesus says, tell John what you hear, what you see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised up, the poor have good news preached to them.
Yep.
And then Jesus says, "Blessed is the one who's not offended by me," right? So Jesus is quoting Isaiah. And I guess I've always just looked at that text as, like, from Jesus' angle, that Jesus, that we look at Jesus and he's like, "Are you the one?" Yeah. I mean, look at all this stuff.
Proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. I guess I really hadn't ever considered why John is asking that question. And I think that's where kind of the angle you were taking, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you want to say more?
Yeah. So for John, I mean, just to catch you up, if you weren't there, or if you've forgotten, and that's okay. My dad, growing up, he'd always ask us, "Hey, what'd you learn in the sermon today?" This was like Sunday afternoon at 4:00, because my dad was a pastor, and we'd all go, yeah, and then we'd try and remember.
Well, people say stuff to me like, "Oh, that sermon you preached like 2 weeks ago, there's something," and I'm like, what in the world? What did I say?
Well, it's kind of funny, like, because I've had that even with you, actually, and it's always interesting to me, like when I touch my do the triple check, the triple pat.
Yeah,
I always think of you did a sermon on the Ephesians 6.
Yeah,
and it's just, it's like, why that? Maybe because I do it so often, and so then I think of it, but it's not like you can't remember everything.
But I remember talking about checking for my phone, my wallet, and my keys, but I have no idea why I talked about it in a sermon.
Well, you had us do we did like all the arsenal that's listed in Ephesians 6. You remember that? The whole church we set up. It was pretty fun, man. It was fun. But yeah, so just to get back to Matthew 11, John's in prison. And so this question, are you the one or should we expect another? That's a troubling question to hear John asking, because this whole time he has been putting everything on Jesus, saying he is the one. I mean, in John's gospel, we hear him pointing to him and saying, behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. He directs some of his own disciples to Jesus. He participates in Jesus' baptism, is like, I shouldn't be doing this, because you're the one. But now, so it's like, okay, John was so strong, so heavy on Jesus is the guy, and I believe in him. Why now is he kind of waffling,
Well, yeah, well, I guess, and this is my question, maybe why I haven't seen it or noticed that before, but what part of the text makes you feel like he's waffling?
Well, just the fact that he's asking. He's not saying, Jesus, here I am in prison. I'm so glad you're the one, because I know you've come to save us, and my hope is in you, and I'm going with this great faith and conviction to my death. No, he says, I really, really hope you are the one, because I am about to go to my death, and you're going to save me, right? And I mean, he doesn't know what saving is even going to look like yet, right? I mean, that's the other piece we have to have some sympathy for. John is, he doesn't know Jesus' plan. The disciples aren't even tracking, disciples of Jesus, when he tells them plain and simple, I'm going to die, I'm going to rise again. They're like, huh? So for John, yeah, he's, the fact that he asks, should we expect another, that's pretty considerable. And then Jesus' comment back to him, because he says all these things. Look, John, look what I'm doing. My ministry is clear. And by the way, if you read at the beginning of chapter 11, John had already heard the deeds of Christ. His disciples had come sharing the deeds of Christ with him. So he's actually getting from Jesus, Jesus is not doing any more for John than the messengers of the word had already done for him.
Okay.
Which
so
is
he's having to double check almost,
well, kind of. It's like, and I think we do this sometimes. We say, God, if you would just show me this or that, right? Then I'll kind of know, but Jesus says, no, just trust my word. And that was all that word was already given to John.
Yeah.
And so Jesus says, look, my deeds prove who I am. It's so clear. It ought to be clear, right? Look at what I'm doing. And you have the prophets, and you have the scriptures, like that parable of Lazarus, and the rich man, right? You have all this stuff. It's all pointing to me, John. Think of Isaiah. That was your guy when you're, I've come making ways in the wilderness. You're quoting Isaiah. Think of Isaiah. And what's also interesting is in Isaiah talks about the captives being set free. And Jesus doesn't mention that to John.
Yeah.
So it's almost like Jesus is saying, salvation through me is not necessarily going to mean your life looks pretty or good or easy or triumphant even. It's the opposite usually, right?
Not in the least, and not getting ahead of myself, but that's where we're going to head next week.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Which is, just to call it, so there's something out there called prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
And that's the idea that basically, well, name it and claim it. I want a Ferrari. Named it. All right, I'm going to go out and claim it because God is going to bless me. Yeah. And if I just pray hard enough and all this. And that's why I was thankful for this follow-up, because there was someone, I can't remember who, but I got a feedback piece from the week before about, I didn't go there, and they acknowledged that, but they were kind of like, I hope people don't think that if you just pray to God, that you can expect him to do the very thing you're asking of him, because that was the whole week before with the centurion and healing, and we talk a lot about God transforming our lives, but we have to understand the way that God does it is the way that God does it.
Yeah. It's interesting. So last night I watched on YouTube this debate between two Christian pastors and two atheists. So it was a debate, and the thing that one of the atheist guys he's some kind of scientist that works with, I think like with prosthesis, with like amputees. And so he's doing all kinds of like crazy like neuroscience stuff, like giving people the ability to like feel when they haven't been able to feel before, and like regain all these functions and stuff. And so from his like atheistic perspective, and he in this debate, he was not a kind man to these Christian people, unfortunately. But his point to them, and he just kept saying it over and over and over again, is, science does stuff and it makes things happen. And I'm actually like, giving people the ability to feel who haven't felt, and give people like the ability to see who haven't seen. I guess he's doing like crazy research stuff.
Yeah.
And your religion does nothing, and he was like, I mean, he quoted like, Elijah and Baal, call down fire from heaven and stuff. And he said to the Christian people, come on, call on, you're familiar with this. Why don't you call on your God to call on fire? And one of the Christian guys responded and said, I'm sorry, doctor, but for your sake, I think it's probably better that God doesn't allow us to demand him to call down fire right now.
Yeah.
So, but this man's criticism of Christianity is to this point, like, come on, I thought your God can do stuff. You say that miracles still happen to this day. You say that God is still active. Where? Like, prove it. Show me,
Yeah.
And the Christian pastors didn't really take that bait, because basically we believe that God is the one who acts when God acts.
That's right.
And God does what God does when he does it, according to his plan and his purpose, not ours.
Right. Right.
And so, and Jesus will even say that, I forget which chapter it is. Maybe in 14, I think, where, so like the Pharisees and they want these signs. They want signs of Jesus. And Jesus says, like, you'll get no sign except for the sign of Jonah.
Right.
And he walks away.
Yeah.
Which is basically saying he's foretelling his death and resurrection. He's like, listen, I don't need, I'm going to do something way beyond any of this, this stuff. Yeah. I'm giving sight to the blind. I'm healing the sick. I'm doing all those things, but that's not, I mean, the biggest thing is still yet to come. And after that, you don't need anything else. You really don't. You don't need any more proof.
Yeah, that's right. Right. And the whole point of the signs is not, so they're signs. I mean, literally, like, they're signposts.
They're pointing.
They point to something. The point of the signs and the wonders and the miracles is not them themselves. And the point of following Jesus, it's not, there's no beatitude that is, blessed are you for being blessed, by God. It's like, blessed for all these other things that don't sound as good, because the blessing of God, this is kind of hard, because a lot of us, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's not, a lot of us follow Jesus, or maybe people first get turned on to Christianity because it might do something for you. Like, will it actually help you strengthen your marriage? Absolutely. Will it help you be a better parent? Absolutely. Will it give a whole civilization a code of conduct and ethics that can make a society thrive? It will, yeah. But that's not the point of it, right? And so, like, there are these benefits, but the benefits are byproducts, right? And the point of, well, I think you said this recently, like, the point of it is not so much like, follow me because I'm going to give you all this good stuff. It's follow me because of who I am, like, because it's true, that's enough. Like, this historically happened. A guy died and rose again and claimed to be the Messiah and said, believe in me. It's like, well, yeah, I guess that's pretty compelling evidence, like, you don't have to prove yourself to me by bettering my life, but will your life be bettered? Absolutely. But it might not look, and that's why I think in some respects why Jesus is getting on him for asking for signs. You're asking for the wrong reason. You're coming with kind of the wrong question about who Jesus is.
Yeah. Well, and in your sermon, you talked a fair amount about, like, the the offensiveness of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you meant by that? Like that he's going to tell you things that that aren't according to your hopes or expectations?
Yeah. So like, and I don't think super on the nose about the different ways Jesus can be offensive. Like I mentioned some, but I didn't say, here's one category and here's another. But I kind of led in with, like experientially as a Christian, you might find God offensive when you are put in a circumstance, well, probably not quite like John the Baptist, because you're probably not hearing this in prison, ready to get your head chopped off. But if your life is looking rough or wrecked or messed up, or something has gone just so awry, and it's kind of like, God, this isn't supposed to happen, that might be offensive to you. But so that's kind of just like the nature of Jesus' lordship. Like that's an offensive concept to people who want to run our own lives or have a vision for how our lives ought to go, instead of saying, no, you run my life, God, like help me go where you're calling me to go. But then the other way I think that Jesus is offensive and probably more offensive to the world is just his claims, his teachings.
Yeah.
So like saying that I am the only way, to a culture that says, no, you got to respect all the different ways, to heaven. That's very offensive. That's not very tolerant to say, nope, I'm the one.
Yeah.
But Jesus said that.
Yeah. Well, I guess just to clarify though, like, so Jesus said to John, blessed are those who are not offended by me.
Right.
Right. So, and I think the point there, and just to clarify, because I don't think what you were saying in your sermon was, make sure that you're offended by Jesus, and that's how you'll know if you're a Jesus follower. But I think when you submit to the lordship of Jesus, he's not as offensive.
Well, like the character of Jesus.
Yeah.
His characters, well, and that was kind of the tail end of the sermon, but like, so his character, he is absolutely compassionate,
right,
tender.
Right. But so again, none of us can be perfect, but if you submit to the lordship of Jesus, if you're not trying to fight against his authority, if you're not coming to him and saying, things got to be this way and that way, if you're just saying, you can take me, wherever you want to go, however you want to do it, that then we actually delight in that. We don't take offense to that. We don't hate God's law. We actually delight in his law. Absolutely. Right. But you have to be willing to call him Lord and let him actually be there.
And that's where the offense happens, I think, because there's a part of you and me and everyone on the face of this earth that will rage against the word of God. And that's what Paul gets in Romans 8, right? Romans 7 and 8. That there's a part of us that wants to defy God's will. There's a part of us that will never cease to fight against God's will. And that's the part, when we think about taming, that's what the word meek means. When Jesus says, blessed are the meek, it's a word for taming a wild stallion. And that's that sinful nature, that sinful side of us is that stallion that wants to say, no, I define what's right and wrong. No, I say how this goes.
Yeah, but I don't want to get ahead of myself because that's where we are going to go next week. But we're so just a quick tease because there's plenty to talk about.
Yeah.
But Jesus will say, whoever take up your cross and follow me. Whoever would desire to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it.
That's right.
Right. And this is what we're talking about. So yes, in our sinful nature, we will desire to fight against God's will, but that's not the goal. This is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
That's not the goal.
No.
The goal is to submit to the lordship of Jesus, to die to yourself, Because when you do, you will actually find that his word is a delight, and that his law is good. And it's offensive to the sin, but it is not offensive to the new self that you find in Christ.
Correct.
So I just wanted to just clarify that.
Yes. Don't strive to be, and that's actually like, so blessed is the one who's not offended by me, right? So like the offense is there. Like if you can't see the offensiveness of Jesus, either in his teaching or in his authority, are you looking at Jesus? Because I would imagine there's going to be something that is difficult for you in reckoning with that relationship with Jesus, because he's perfect and we're not. So there's going to be something in your life, in your walk that isn't, it has to get humbled.
Yeah. And that can be a whole bunch of different stuff. It could be just the fact that, like, let's say you've got some addiction that you think that you love and is okay. And God says, no, that's not okay. You're making that thing your Lord.
That's right.
That needs to die. You got to flee from that.
Right.
Well, that's a little bit offensive, right? But also, so that's on one end. But on the other end, like, I was just having a conversation this last week with somebody who's exploring Christianity, and I was explaining the grace of God in Jesus Christ, and that the death of one man covers over the sins of the whole world. And this person who's new to Christianity was saying, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't seem fair. That God, that one person can die for everybody. This person was saying, like, somebody, if I do wrong, I should be punished for what I do. And if I do right, I should get rewarded for what I do. I said, yeah, that's the way that it works in the world, but that's not the way that it works with God.
Right.
And when I explained the grace of God in Jesus Christ, this person said, I've never felt so loved, actually. So, but it started with offense.
His grace is offensive.
Yeah, we talk about, like, the scandal of the cross. Like,
that's right.
Scandalous. Like,
it's not fair.
No, right.
Which is, like, actually, so this might be it won't be that long of a sidebar, but we're watching this new show on Netflix called Outlast. Okay. Have you heard of that one?
Ooh, is that the Alaskan thing?
Yeah, it's like Alone. Okay, it's super cool.
I was going to, and then I was like, is it going to just be filled with drama?
Yes.
I know.
But it's fun because it's like, just if you don't know what either of these shows are, these are wilderness survival shows with, like, wilderness survival experts, basically. And so they put these people in Alaska and they say, you hunt, survive, build shelters, In Alone, people do that alone.
Yeah.
In this one, they got teammates and, like, a squad, right? So there's, like, 4 camps, and they're working together, but then also against these other groups. And initially, people are just keeping to themselves and, trying to do, their own thing. But then as the game progresses, people start trying to, like, mess mentally and psychologically with other groups. At one point, people start stealing from other groups, and there's this cutscene.
Lord of the Flies.
Dude, they say that.
Oh,
they
really?
say, yeah. But there's a cutscene. So, like, they're always breaking out with interviews, to get the people's response of what's going on. And these 2 guys are commenting on the one camp that did the stealing. And they're saying, gosh, did the wilderness bring that out of them? Or is that just who they are? And they said, oh, no, there are people who are like that, and they'll do that kind of thing, and that is just who they are. They're the bad people, We're the good people. We would never do that, and they couldn't imagine doing that. And they were. In the show, they were trying to compete with integrity. But see, that kind of a comment is a way a lot of people think about others, and especially if you've been hurt by somebody, for God to say to you, no, you got to go forgive them. I don't want to do that. They hurt me.
Yeah.
But so it's like, like there's a whole spectrum of stuff that is going to be hard to do. Well, I would say impossible to do, and aside from God's Spirit, and that's the new self that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah. I got you thinking about Outlast.
Well,
just go watch it.
Netflix recommended it to me, and then I was like, ooh, an Alaska wilderness show, which I'm a big fan of this kind of stuff. And then I started reading the descriptions, and it just looked like drama, and I was in the mood for not
like actual
that.
survival skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's sad.
Yeah.
That way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we're continuing to press on through Matthew, and I appreciate it again, like just seeing a different angle to the text this last week, and I hope that when you all are reading the scriptures, though, that when you look at Jesus, you realize that you don't need to look anywhere else, and I think that's what we see, Jesus telling John, like,
Yeah.
no, I am who I am, and regardless of the situation that you find yourself in John's situation does not get better.
No. We'll find that out this week, hey?
Yeah.
Tonight. We'll
Yeah.
watch about that.
I wonder how they're going to show that.
I don't know.
Probably not.
But things are starting to heat up in this narrative.
Yeah.
It's building.
Yep. So, anyways, Jesus says, just put your eyes on him. You don't need to look anywhere else. He is exactly who he says he is. And that's about all we need. So,
Amen, brother.
all right, Kevin, good to be with you, bud.
See you, bro.